morning. Welcome back to the Northside Women Podcast. My name is Gracie, and I'm the Women's Ministry Associate here at Northside. And today I get to interview my mom. So say hi.
Hi.
And so before we start into our interview, though, we're going to start something new with our interviews. We're calling it The Spill. And basically, behind the scenes, we have a basket of a bunch of mugs and tea and coffee and all sorts of fun goodies in there. And so now every guest is going to get to pick a mug that they get to take home with them. And we'll talk about what drink they chose and what mug they chose and why it's special or if it means anything or if they just thought it was cute, whatever. So, Mom, she picked something a little different.
Yes. So I picked a mug that kind of looks like rainbows, and I love rainbow colors and rainbow things. So that's what I picked, but I don't drink coffee, so I brought my own Dr. Pepper because I wish I was a coffee girl, but I'm just not. So this is my drink of choice, so that will be in my mug.
So whatever works.
Yep.
So I feel like most everybody knows you at church, either from their kids or you have quite the history here. So I guess we'll start with your history attending Northside.
I always say I've been going here since before I was born. Everybody, I feel like, knows me. My parents still go here, and I never planned on being in ministry, but I became the children's intern about 19 years ago. Yeah, 19 years ago. And then morphed into the children's assistant. And then about 15 or 16 years ago, we split, and Brian took children and I took preschool. So I've been here my whole life and been on staff here for almost 20 years. So.
And she started under Brian as, like you said, his assistant.
Yes.
And so all the kids all the time.
Yes. So I'm more known as Miss Tamra than just Tamra. But yeah.
So since she's my mom, I get to ask her extra questions.
Okay.
So I like the story of how the preschool came to be. So if you don't know, here at Northside, we do have a preschool and children's ministry just through the church, but we also have a licensed preschool that goes Monday through Thursday. So if you want to talk a little bit about how that came to be and how you got into that.
Brian was over that when it was just a 2-day-a-week, kind of Mother's Day out. And we decided to become licensed and go 4 days a week, and that required a director. And a long time ago, I taught in public school for 2 years and quickly retired and realized that wasn't for me. Elementary was not my jam. So I retired after 2 years, and then when looking through the requirements to be director, realized that I needed 2 years experience in a public school or licensed facility. So was able to see God's hand in that years ago, which allowed me to be the director of the weekday preschool, which I've been for about 15 years. Then we've been able to grow that to a really successful preschool. So.
Yeah. And I just realized I didn't address our
our little
friends.
Decorations.
So when we're recording, this episode will come out on Cinco de Mayo. So happy Cinco de Mayo.
I
hope you enjoy our decorations. I'm trying to think if there's any extra questions with that. I guess not. So we'll circle back. The first question that we're supposed to ask is, how old are you?
I am 47 for about 21 more days.
47 years young.
47 years young. 47 used to seem kind of old, but now it is definitely not.
Yeah, for sure.
So following the littles around keeps me young, I think. So
yeah.
Yep.
And last history at Northside question. So you and Dad also started kind of through Northside. So do you want to talk about how
Yes.
that all kind of happened?
A couple of pastors ago had a son, and he was like, hey, my son's roommate, I think you would get along well with him, so I wanted to introduce you to him. So he introduced me to Miguel, and we met and got married a year later, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he showed up in a blind date with Cowboys jersey and jorts and sandals.
Socks with sandals.
And
I still married him.
Here it is. Here we are. Okay, so tell me how you came to be in a relationship with God.
So I was one of those kids that was in church every time it was open. We had Sunday nights back then. We had Wednesday nights. I was always here. And so for me, it wasn't about learning about God, because I always knew about God, but it was about really getting to know him personally. And I became a Christian when I was 6, but I feel like I didn't really get into that relationship till I was in high school. And we had something called Youth Leadership Fellowship. And I was it's like the SALT team they have now, the leadership team for high schoolers. And it really taught me spiritual disciplines and getting in the Word and prayer. And so I feel like that's when I really started my relationship with him and getting to know him personally. So.
Cool. And kind of piggybacking off of that, what do you feel God has been teaching you lately?
I feel like something that always comes back is that God is in the details. I know he cares about the big things and the big illnesses and the big life changes and all that, but I love that he cares about the details of our lives, the little things of just your daily life with kids, or with losing things and helping you find them, or with weather. Like last night, he let the rain stay until after our kids got to play on the playground, which was a huge blessing as a teacher. So I don't know, just little things. I love that he's in the details. He cares about the little things. And then lately, the past couple of months, I really feel like he's been teaching me that I'm not always going to understand what he's doing or why he allows things to happen, but I can trust him in that. And sometimes I see on the other side of it what he was doing, what his purpose was. Sometimes I don't. But I've learned that often maybe we don't understand what he's doing because his ways are not our ways, but we can trust him even in that not knowing.
Yeah. I have always loved one of the first verses in Genesis. It's talking about how God made the plants and the trees and all the things, but it specifically says that he makes seed-bearing plants. And I believe it was on the Bible Recap by Tara Lee Cobble, but she pointed out that if it wasn't seed-bearing, then it wouldn't be able to reproduce. And so if he had just made the one plant and it wasn't seed-bearing, then it just would have died in the garden and we would never have plants or trees or anything.
Yeah.
And that's always something that, one of those details that has always stuck out to me of, like, not only did he take care and notice in making it seed-bearing, but also to point it out so that we, thousands of years later, could be sitting talking about, wow, he really purposely did that.
Right.
And that's been cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're kind of flying through, but I feel like this one we're going to stick on for a little bit. What is a really good piece of advice that you've been given?
I have a couple. One that a very wise woman told me when you were in high school.
You can shout her out.
Brenda Coleman, thank you. I've never forgotten it. We were sitting by the pool at beach camp and just talking about the struggles of being a mom of a teenager and
struggles.
I mean, just normal. You're great. But like just always having to wait for things, to wait for you to be finished with something, or you weren't driving yet. Just the waiting. There's so much waiting. And she just said, enjoy the wait. She said, there's going to be a time when she'll be driving. She won't need you as much. And you'll wish that you were there waiting. And so that always stuck with me. Just enjoy the wait. And I kind of liken that to, enjoy the extra snuggles if you have little kids. Enjoy what you get, because there will be a time that even if you think it's a struggle now, you're going to miss it. So enjoy the wait. That's definitely stuck with me.
Me and Libby have talked about that before. And I mean, anybody with a toddler especially has moments of like, oh my goodness. And like, I don't have kids yet, obviously, but I've taught since I was 17 in a school setting. And so I've definitely gotten to experience a few of those moments of just crazy kids and stuff. But me and Libby have talked about before, like, she's asked me, are we ever gonna be friends? Like, just friends without me having to be on this or do that or whatever. And I think that that's been sweet for us. For those who don't know, I started college and lived at home. I just have been at Weatherford, and then I got married in 2023, and we moved out for a year, and then we came back to live with them, and we've been there for right around a year. And I feel like that's been really sweet to see how my relationship has been with you and Dad, and With my grandparents, her parents live right behind us, and so getting to be around family and I'll be friends with our family now
Yeah.
instead of it being more of like a parental, like, I'm going to make sure that you're doing this and doing
Right.
this and having that. It's been sweet just to be able to just hang out and
Just
be
be-
friends
right.
and
Yeah.
do all the fun adult things
Right.
without having to worry about if you're going to tell me to clean my room.
Right.
Or do
So parents
anything.
of littles, hang on. It may take a while, but yeah. One other thing, this is not what I was going to say, but there's a company that does some books that we use that says it's just a phase, so don't miss it. Like everything is a phase. If your child is going through, or you are going through a really hard time, it's just a phase. If they're going through a great time, it's just a phase. Something else is coming, but don't miss what's going on right now because there's sweet parts of every time. So.
Yeah.
The second piece of advice that I love, and I feel like I've told you a bunch, is just because you can doesn't mean you should. If that means going to a party, if it means buying something, just because you can do something doesn't always mean you should do something. So kind of random, but that's just something that's always stuck with me.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
Have you seen either of those pieces of advice specifically? Like, do you remember a specific instance where either of those things you had to either look back and think, oh man, I wish that I had done that, or where you did take your own advice and it worked out well? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that's on the spot. I think the enjoy the wait just kind of changed my perspective after we had that conversation. Just the maybe frustration level got a little lower. Something along with that is she also told me, which I probably still nag you about cleaning your room, but like don't bug your kids about cleaning the room because one day it'll be clean for months at a time or maybe forever and you'll wish you had walked in on toys and hair products and stuff. So again, that's just enjoy the season you're in and don't wish for it to be perfect or the next season. And so I think it helped me, hopefully, to just kind of enjoy where we were and not stress that it wasn't, perfect or
Yeah.
whatever. But
So again, I'm putting you on.
no.
These are all on the spot questions, but
Yay.
you're my mom, so I get to do this.
Yeah, okay.
So Jeff and Joseph, if you have to cut out some or put some awkward Jeopardy music, that's fine. But with having the weight and stuff, do you feel like growing up in ministry, both being around ministry a lot and then actually being the minister, do you feel like being around all of those kids and then coming home and having your own kid, how do you feel like you balanced parenting me versus also having to make sure that all of these other children were doing what they needed to be and all of that? Do you feel like that? I guess my question, do you feel like one influenced the other, or were you able to really separate those things to different?
I think I separated them. I feel like if I had you right now, I would be way better of a parent than I was just because I've learned so much. I think I just was learning as I was starting in ministry and growing as a mom of one. You were my one and only try at it. So I feel like I don't know. To answer your question, I think I could separate it well. I just have learned so much in, I guess, more recent years maybe. I just feel like I've gained a lot of information and knowledge and training and stuff that I kind of wish I could do things differently. One thing I have been reminded of lately is God's grace as a parent, that if I read things, I'm like, man, I messed that up. But look how great she turned out. That God is very gracious to take our efforts as a parent or as a wife or as a minister and take that and make good use of it in spite of us. So that's been really evident to me. Has there been any advice that you remember that I've given you that's been good or that you can always remember me saying or something that you've remembered?
Well, so we talked about this yesterday, So I was able to kind of prepare
yeah.
something.
That would be nice.
I was just thinking, whenever you said just because you could doesn't mean you should, it made me think when I was doing, I think it was ACEable for driving. I think it was ACEable when they said, when in doubt, chicken out.
Yes.
And we still say that all the time, and it always makes me laugh. But I think that's kind of silly, but I think about that a lot with everything, like with driving, but also just when, like, just with other things, like sometimes when in doubt, I'm going to take a step back. Like, I don't need to address this situation for a minute. I don't need to do, but so that's kind of a silly one from ACEable. But all growing up, I remember, well, I guess when I got old enough to start dating, I remember you would always tell me every relationship is either going to end in marriage or a breakup. And while that seems like such like a simple, like, duh, of course it's going to, it just always stuck with me. And especially being believers, like, it's not, I don't know, some people specifically outside of the faith they'll be dating and then maybe they'll live with each other and they'll become roommates, or maybe they'll get engaged, or then maybe they break up after having a house together and a dog and all the things. But for believers, it really is either you're together or you're not. And since the Bible doesn't really talk about dating and kind of what that gray area looks like, I feel like that was something that always kind of reminded me, like, okay, what's happening? Like, what am I really doing here? What's happening with this relationship? And, like, we're either going to be together for the long haul or we're not going to be together at all. And is this somebody that, even if we've been dating for a week, like, okay,
if you're not prepared for either, then don't get into it. Yeah.
And that's something, I'll say with Chris, my husband, I think it was even before we started dating, I remember we were hanging out one night and we were just driving around and he started asking me all of these like deep questions and all these like important, like, okay, when did you get saved? Or how do you feel about this? Or have you ever struggled with this? And, well, do you want kids? Do you want to do this? And I want to be in ministry someday. Like, are you going to do that with me? And I remember thinking in the moment at first, like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. But then like a couple minutes later, we're still talking about it and stuff, and it was something that I really respected about him because it followed what you're saying. Like, he also had that same principle of, okay, we're either going to do this or we're not, so let's just figure it out now before we get in too deep.
Right.
And I feel like that was something that started off our relationship really strong, but I wouldn't have had that importance, I guess, of that if y'all hadn't have talked about that from the beginning. And I know you asked about you, but I remember Dad one time told me that I think his friend Joey said, actually,
words of wisdom,
that he was talking about, I think it was specifically with friendships, but I think he was talking about dating. That I remember me and Dad were driving one night somewhere, and he was just talking about how, like, if we look at our life like a garden, and if we have all of these different people, like our flowers or whatever, like if they start to grow weeds, or if there's all these things, you're going to have to pull out the weeds or pull out the dying flowers and all of that. And just telling me basically to make sure that I'm keeping what's healthy and good in my garden. And if there's not something that is doing well, your face.
I'm just trying to picture Joey saying this.
I said the same thing. But I just remember that that's something that I think about too. So thanks, Dad and Joey. And obviously there are going to be seasons where people are serving you or where you have to serve people. And I think that there has to be grace in that. But if there's something that constantly you feel like is just a weed taking over your garden and it's constantly stealing your joy and taking away your happiness, then you have to be able to have the wisdom to take that out or remove yourself from it, or at least scooch it a little farther down. But so I just said joy, and you have joy on your bracelet. And in our house, that's been a word that has been around a lot in the last few years. So do you want to talk a little bit about joy and just what that word means and how that kind of came to be a big thing?
I don't really know how that came to be my word. I just have it everywhere I've done crafts with it, I buy things with it on there. I just think it's important to find the joy in every day. A couple of years ago, I started to have some symptoms of some thyroid issues, and shortly after that, I went on the college mission trip, and there's always a verse for that week that we all have to memorize. And that year it was from James, and it was about count it all joy, that you're going to go through trials, but you can count those as joy because they're going to produce perseverance in you. And so I memorized that and just meditated on it over and over. And then that week, everything was about joy and trials and how God is going to walk you through them. So that got me through that time. One of my good friends, without knowing that was the verse for the week, she got me a sweatshirt that said, count it all joy. And it all just became real, that no matter what I have to face with these medical issues, that I can have joy. And through God's grace, they turned out to be nothing. I didn't have to go through any treatments or anything. But that was just a big reminder that we can count things as joy, even if they're not perfect. Joy is not about being happy. It's not about perfection. It's about just knowing that God's going to take care of you. Kind of like what I said earlier. You may not understand it or like it, but you can trust Him.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I have a relationship with Him, because I wouldn't be able to have joy or have that trust or be able to go through hard times if I didn't have that and that experience with Him.
Yeah.
So
I know something that was a big thing in our family that we were all kind of able to see God work through, specifically with having joy in the hardships. A week before I got married, her mom, my grandma, also known as Grams, everybody knows Grams, she had a heart attack and ended up having to have open heart surgery, and it was, again, a week before the wedding, and
10
so
days,
it was
yes.
crazy time, but we... like whenever it all happened, she had just fallen in the middle of the night, but my grandpa had called my mom and was like, I need your help, come down here. But she had just a little tiny cut on her head, and that's why we took her into the hospital just to get her head checked out, and then they ran tests and found out heart stuff, and then it ended up obviously snowballing into heart surgery and stuff. But I just remember that time, me and Chris driving back and forth from the hospital, and with you and Dad driving back and forth, and I just remember all of us having these conversations of, okay, are we still going to do the wedding if something happens? Like, what are we going to, like, how do we, what do we do?
Right.
Like, what do you do in this situation?
Right.
But I just remember feeling so much love from all of our friends and family, and just a lot of people in your life, like Shauna and Audra, and all of your people were just rallying around you, and all of our people. And Chris and I remember us just sitting, I think we actually went to go pick up his tux in Fort Worth while we were waiting for her surgery and stuff. And I remember we went to go do that, and we were just sitting and talking, and we both were just saying, okay, look how many people have come around us to support us. Like, we're still going to get married. We're still going to do this because we know that it's all in His plan and His timing, and whatever happens is His will, and it's going to be perfect no matter what. And lo and behold, she was at the wedding with her heart pillow and all the things and stuff. And so that was one situation where I feel like we all had to be brutally reminded of, we're not in charge, but we can still have joy in the hard.
And I remember I did a lot of the details for a wedding, and literally the night before Mom's heart attack, I finished the very last detail, and I said out loud, like, I think I'm done. This was 2 weeks ahead. And then the next morning, our lives changed, and we were at the hospital for the next 2 weeks till wedding day. And so that was another reminder that He literally is in every detail, and He cared that I got the last flower glued on right before I needed to be available at the hospital. So just a reminder that He does care about everything.
Yeah. So rounding out our last question, but this one is also going to be a fun question.
Okay.
What else do you want people listening to know?
I have a plug. So I forgot the book. I found a book this semester called Boundaries with Kids, and it's just wonderful. It just talks about how to help parents take the frustration and the weight of your kids' behaviors from you to your kids, and making them feel kind of the effects of their behaviors. And so I'm going to do a class on that this summer. It's going to be on Wednesday evenings for parents of preschoolers and elementary kids. And so there's a QR code in the bulletin, and I think Keith's weekly email, a link. So I'd love to have you join me for that. I'm certainly not the expert. I'm just kind of going off their guide, but I think it's great information to help parents, because it's one other thing I've always say to parents is, if it's easy being a parent, you're not doing it right. So if it's hard and you feel like you're in the trenches and you're struggling, you're doing it right. So that's one thing that we have coming up this summer that I would love for you to join me for.
Yeah. Since this will come out on Cinco de Mayo, that means that this podcast will also come out on the day that our newsletter comes out. Okay. So I'll make sure to put the QR code and the link in our newsletter if you want to sign up for her class. Awesome. And I will say, again, I'm not a parent, but I have had my fair share of experience with all ages of kids, especially being in school for education right now, doing observation classes and stuff. We see all ages, all stages, all different kinds, and we're learning all about different things that kids have and can do and stuff. And something else that I'll say that you've taught me, a couple things with teaching, but I feel like goes along with the same thing, is fair isn't always equal, but equal isn't always fair. And I think I've said that before on this podcast maybe, but basically just saying what one kid needs might not be equal for another kid's needs, and just it reminds me to, even with friendships or relationships and stuff, like not everything is going to be the same for every single person in our life. But the second thing that I know for sure I talked about a little bit in my interview, just not your words, was you always talk about, especially with kids, like, are your expectations too high, or are they not doing what they actually should be doing? And so, like, an example of that is if they're scribbling all over their paper with a crayon, well, are they being mean and you know that they can color correctly, but they're purposely trying to break their crayon? Or are they two and don't know how to hold a crayon and they're just scribbling for fun? Right. And, like, are you going to punish them for something that is developmentally appropriate, or is this something that you know? Right.
I just wrote a 10-page paper
better
about that. Yeah. Right.
And so I feel like that's something that I've taken for everything, especially with school now, of observing even fifth graders. Like, I remember with one of my classes, okay, that kid just did something. Like, is that normal appropriate for them? Is that normal for them? Or is that something that needs to be addressed? Yeah. But, well, is there anything else you
I don't think so.
I know. I'm trying to think if I have any other important questions.
Any other pop questions you want to add?
I guess I can ask. So, you have always worked my whole life, and I've grown up at the church or grown up at my dad's office or wherever. But Dad is also a deacon at the church, and he does lights and stuff on Sundays, and he's, again, also a doctor. So how do you feel like your relationship with him, do you feel like you being in ministry and him also being in a constantly having to pour out to people job, like, how have you seen that affect your relationship in a sense of, like, have you ever felt like you have to focus more on ministry or felt that pull, or has he ever felt that way? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, that would definitely maybe be more a question for him. I know we don't worship together because, sometimes we do at the Red Desk when we watch the service together, but either I go to the service and he's doing lights, or we don't go to a Bible study together just because we're both doing ministry things. So sometimes that's hard.
Well, I'm going to pause you then.
Okay.
Do you feel like, I'm going to maybe subtly plug for people to volunteer, but with that, so I've heard that from a lot of people who do ministry. Specifically, I feel like at bigger churches, not even from our church. Some of Chris's family is also in ministry a couple towns away,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's always a common thing in any church. But do you do you feel like if people all came together to share the load, do you feel like more people could go to church more consistently?
I think so. I mean, I think every church, no matter what size that I've ever talked to, always has an issue with volunteers. And I think that I struggle with my place is in preschool versus I need to go to the service and get fed. And actually, thank you, Brad. In January, he really challenged me to go to the service more. So I have been able to most Sundays go into the worship service, and people are like, "We saw you in big church." So that's been really cool. But I think it's definitely hard being in ministry. There are nights when I have things going on, and it does take time for my family, or I have events, or I have studies that I'm leading, or things like that. It is hard being in ministry, and I'm thankful that I have an understanding husband who understands that I have to be up here extra, or that I may need to prep for this, or be up here extra. So I think if you don't have an understanding partner, then that's very hard, but thankfully I do. So yes, it's a struggle, but it works for us. So
Yeah.
but yes, we can always use more volunteers.
Yeah. I think it's been interesting for me now having, even though it's just as an associate and not like executive head pastor, but just figuring out, okay, being in ministry, figuring out how to pour into others, but also taking time for yourself. And I've talked about this with my rooted group before, but being in ministry, sometimes it's hard to separate what is work and what is actually you taking time to spend time with the Lord. And sometimes my work is reading all of Matthew to separate it for next semester's Rooted. You can sign up at the link in our newsletter. But sometimes that is my job, is to read the Bible for hours and study certain things and do certain things. And so that's something that I feel like I've had to kind of navigate through, is what is work, but what is my personal relationship with him. And we've talked about that before too, for you, of what is actually necessary, important for your job versus what do you need to do to fill your own cup before.
And it's
pouring out.
amazing what you learn when you're preparing to teach kids.
Yeah.
As you're reading just the basic Bible stories, we don't go super deep in preschool, but just reading those, the things you can learn about his faithfulness and God's character, and things that I learn when I've read a story 100 times, but I read it, read something for the first time. So definitely teaching kids can be a learning experience for me.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I don't go to a Bible study on Sundays, but I'm in a D group, and those girls have been awesome just to pour into me and for me to be able to share struggles and things that I don't really have an outlet for otherwise. That's been an awesome thing, and I love them. Hey, girls. So that's been helpful. If you are serving or you work on Sundays or you're not able to be in a Bible study, having a D group or some group of like-minded women to get with and be able to share with and study scripture with is super important.
Yeah. I will 100% agree with what you were saying about teaching kids. And even last night, our Wednesday night story, we're recording this on Thursday, but our Wednesday Bible study story last night for 4-year-olds was about things that they did in the early church and how we still do a lot of those same things now, like prayer, meeting in the church, breaking bread together, and giving money. And I asked the kids, like, have you ever heard of giving money to the church? Or it's called tithing, and it's kind of a silly word. And we were just talking about it, and one little girl raised her hand and she was like, well, where do I give the money? And I was like, well, you just give it to the people who work at the church, or give it to your mommy and daddy and they can give it to the church. And she was like, oh, okay, I'll do that when I get home. And it was just funny because it was just such a, oh, okay, well, I guess that's
Right.
sure, whatever. And it was a good reminder for me of, like, it's not that serious, a lot of things. And if we just do them without hesitating and without
Right.
worrying about what's going to come next. If we have that childlike faith,
Yeah.
and if we just do the
That's
things,
awesome. Right.
then same with, we had a little boy in our class, and he was a little missionary and went and talked to his next door neighbors, and I believe they were a Mormon family, and he just went over and he was talking to his neighbor friends and telling them all about Jesus and how they can ask him into their hearts, and
All the Bible stories he had learned.
yes,
Yeah.
he was just going over and just without hesitation, just it was something that he was excited about and he wanted to share, and it was something that he loved, and those are the things that remind me, okay, if this little 4-year-old can go and
Right.
share the gospel with people that maybe he's really great friends with them, maybe he just went to say hi, I
Right.
don't know. But we can also do that
Yeah.
too. So, yeah,
Yep. Kids are awesome.
they are. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today. I know you
welcome.
weren't super duper excited. I kind of had to coax her.
I'd be much
here.
more comfortable if I had a baby in my arms,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to spend the morning with you.
Yeah, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you in a few.
Bye.